Now I'd just like to introduce our guests a little bit more formally this evening. Alice Parker is an internationally renowned American composer, arranger, conductor, and pedagogue. She's authored 5 operas, 11 song cycles, 33 cantatas, 11 works for chorus and orchestra, 47 choral suites, and more than 40 hymns. Her work includes a wealth of arrangements based on folk songs and hymns, many of which were produced in cooperation with Robert Shaw. Alice is best known for these kinds of arrangements of spirituals, mountain hymns, and folk songs, early American hymns, and international folk songs, most notably in French, Spanish, Hebrew, and Ladino. She believes that words are the most important part of composing for the voice, and the music has to grow out of the words. For Parker, what we miss when we don't have song is the means of creating a community, of creating a whole out of a group of people, which is so fitting. A new documentary, Alice at Home with Alice Parker, that illuminates her life and art through a series of intimate conversations with filmmaker Eduardo Montes Bradley, was released in October of 2020. And I would encourage you to view it. It's really lovely. Claudia Schreier has choreographed for dance, opera, and film across the US and internationally. She has been praised for her distinctive choreographic voice, which fuses neoclassical technique with contemporary vocabulary. Claudia is the recipient of the 2018 Princess Grace Award for Choreography. She has choreographed over 30 ballets and has been commissioned by companies and organizations including Dance Theater of Harlem, Vail Dance Festival, American Ballet Theater Studio Company, Juilliard Opera, New York Choreographic Institute, and Jeffrey Winning Works. As artistic director of Claudia Schreier and Company, she has presented several full evening performances of her choreography featuring dancers from New York City Ballet, American Ballet Theater, Miami City Ballet, and Dance Theater of Harlem, among other leading companies and collaborations with composers and musicians. In April 2020, Claudia was named choreographer in residence at Atlanta Ballet. Some of her recent projects include The Hikers, a collaboration with artist Rashid Johnson, and Places, a 4-minute work commissioned just late last year by Miami City Ballet that was choreographed specifically for the camera. Please join me in welcoming these 2 very extraordinary women that we have the privilege to see tonight and who have the privilege of creating something really extraordinary. And with that, I'll hand it over to David.
Thanks, Pat. I'm going to talk to you both separately, and then we'll talk together another little bit here. But I have just kind of a few questions for each of you. I'm going to start with you, Alice. First of all, it's so good to see you. I have missed seeing you a lot at Chorus America. It's really great to see you again. And thank you for this piece. I really cannot tell you how much, as I've said, for many, many years, this piece has meant a lot to me. You know, in the vast amount of music that you've written over the years, I'm curious to know how much have you had the opportunity to have your music interact with dance in any way? Are there other pieces? I mean, I blush to say I don't know enough. Well, there's so many that I can't know them all personally. But are there other works, or is this something that's a little new for your work? Oh, you're muted, Alice. Wait a minute. Let me
see.
The joys of Zoom.
No.
There you are.
On?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, good. No, it is a new experience for me, David, but it's one that I really welcome. I feel so much that any 2-year-old shows us what the instinctive human reaction is to singing, to music. And I don't know any 2-year-old who can stay still with their body for 1 second when there's music in the room. They are dancing right from the beginning. And we're all taught to stay still. One of the refrains of my childhood was, Alice Parker, sit still, because I couldn't sit still. I had to move. And I love dance, and I feel one of my intuitive responses to any melody when I start working on it is, how do I want to move to this? I really don't think there's any such thing as rhythm in music that is disconnected from the human body. As human beings, how do I want to interpret this? And it's not in terms of a traditional dance step or something, but is it a long flowing line that is just gently enclosing the universe? Or is it something that is much more localized in the body, like some Indian dance? And how does this music make a connection with my body so that there's this kinetic feeling all the way through? In one way, I've written all my music for dance. I'm always thinking of dance. So thank you, Claudia, for what you were able to find in it. That was just lovely.
You know, it's so interesting to hear you say that, because you know, obviously you're also a very well-known and respected conductor, and I know that.
Do you have another question, David?
Yes. I want to sort of see how you feel in the sense of breath and the way breath creates gesture. I mean, you were talking about the idea that you're, you know, when you're thinking about composing the piece, that you are thinking of it in terms of how does it make, you know, kinetically your body want to move. From a conducting standpoint, do you have a similar reaction in the sense of how that kinetically works with your body, that the breath is related to the gesture?
Well, certainly the breath. Let me go back one step. I always keep trying to find where things come from, so I keep backing up. We're working with a phenomenon of nature. That is, song existed in nature before we humans came along, as I read our development. Bird song, for instance, and all the songs, all the sounds of nature, wind, water. It's just a marvelous example for music. I have a little brook right across the street from my house, and it flows. Nothing can stop it. It's totally flexible, but it's one of the strongest forces in the universe. Nothing can stop that water from moving except a dam, which is temporary. And it ripples over stones and little waterfalls and stops in quiet pools. It's always moving, and there's always this sense of absolutely natural flow of responding to what the atmosphere is right around it. The stones that are there, or the quiet places, or the little sandy beaches. And that's the quality that I want to get in my music, is that it flows naturally. When you get a song to an existing tune, like this wonderful folk ballad that God is Seen is constructed on, that one of the things I love about it are these little short lines. God is seen. And you have these six syllable lines and interspersed with these 3-syllable lines. So you're constantly being thrown off from a regular format, as with the songs we sing that are 8 syllables plus 8 syllables plus 8 syllables plus 8 syllables, which would be much harder for me to get this kinetic feeling. And one of the things I love about this melody. The other thing that happens in addition to this movement through time, which is the basic rhythm, it's tempo and the length of phrases, and whether it's duple or triple or mixed. You have all that play with time, but you also have play with musical space, and that is acoustics. That's the pitch elements. And I think that just as the rhythmic elements are all there in the poem, if you read it aloud and read it well, the beginning of my piece is all in that initial reading. The initial reading, it's harder to find those pitch elements, but the voice does go up and down a little bit. And what you're doing is expanding that always as you're thinking melody, and that grows into melodies. And in this case, we were given a melody, which I just found so charming. There's something just lovely about the little repetitions in this melody and the way it keeps curling around and finally coming back to its home note. So that we're walking in these two worlds, just as we do as we live. We're working in space and time. And it's recognizing those and having a point of view about the melody so that it sings and continually sings, that it moves so easily from one verse to the next. And each section seems to grow out of the one before, so there's no hesitation, and reaches a climax. God, she cries. And then they're slowing down at the end, the coda, the relaxing of tensions. It's all part of natural processes. It's the way that the natural world works. And the closer I can get to that, the more I get myself out of the way, all my clever ideas about compositional ideas about doing this or doing that or something like that. If I just get those out of the way completely and flow with this possibility that's there.
Alice, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for those thoughts. It really, it's always a delight to hear your ideas about music. And thank you again for this piece. Very, very much.
Thank you.
Claudia,
thank you.
Obviously, this
thank you.
segues in to a kind of a question about can you describe a little bit about how you went about creating this performance?
An honor to hear Alice speak and text to creating melody and music. That's how I would like to think. I hear music to create dance. It's kind of getting out of the way of myself and letting the music drive me, and letting the music tell me what the most natural flow and form is to create structure around this beautiful structure, this beautiful melodic structure. And so that is kind of how I wanted to approach it, knowing Alice's background and her love for the naturalistic elements of music as a whole, and then more specifically how it relates to this piece and the beauty of the text and all of the elements of specific, the lily and the thorn and the growing of the corn and all of the poetry inherent in it. How can we bring movement to that in a way that feels that can honor the text and elevate it through the human body?
Yeah, no, that's really. It actually shows that in a way, even though you hadn't even met each other, you're actually very simpatico in the way you're thinking about how to approach this and how to make this, something incredibly creative come out of this similar idea. I'm kind of curious because I know this is one of the few sort of digital remote projects you've worked on. And I know that you choreographed and rehearsed and then directed this piece remotely, even to the point where we were doing you via FaceTime in the room with moving the dancers around in the final filming and everything. So I mean, it must have been quite a challenge. And I'm wondering, how did it, knowing that you would have to face those difficulties, how did it inform your thinking about the way to approach this piece? And how you were thinking about creating dance in this remote environment?
I think it's a real testament to the artists and the collaborators involved and everyone who went into making it. And, being part of the choreography, because Pat had to carry me around on his phone all day long so I could chime in and direct. So he became a part of the creative process as much as anyone else. But Larissa and Chalvar are just extraordinary people, and they have a sense of camaraderie that is palpable. And from a logistical standpoint, I knew that we discussed developing this work. We wanted to create a duet because there was something about translating the naturalism of the earth to the natural, like the natural sense of being. A community and relationships are just as natural to the world as a growing green tree or flower. And so to show that human connection meant that we had to bring in people who already felt that connection, especially in the times of COVID. And Larissa and Chalvar knew each other and were very fond of each other. And so that was just kind of inherent to the piece from the get-go. And it created a sense of trust in the room. So even though we were technology was on every end, and I had my monitor and my laptop on my end. They had two monitors set up in a studio, and there's the usual Zoom, you know, efforts that one must go through. Uh, Ultimately, it was just the three of us creating dance to this gorgeous music, and so everything else kind of falls away. And that was the ultimate goal, to present something that, yes, it was created under unique circumstances, but ultimately it is still song and dance, and that is what we're here for.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. I have one final question for both of you, actually, and it's the same question because I'm kind of curious to see how you both answer. Um, so now that you've seen the final product, certainly in Alice's case, you actually have just seen the final product. But I'll start with you, Claudia. What surprised you most about sort of stepping back from it after being so involved in sort of the mechanics of it? I know for myself, stepping away from it is the part that's actually the hardest. But then when you look at it now, is there something that surprised you about it that you didn't expect? Claudia?
Oh, sorry.
I can't, I can't answer that because I saw it just this once, and I would like to see it about 10 times, and then I could begin to step back from it. But it had that lovely sense of flow. The ending was just beautiful, Claudia, the way the bodies interlocked and came together at the end. That was just lovely. And the contrast between the surges of emotion and the times that they were more restful, and the bodies separating and then coming together. Yeah, it was just lovely to watch. Thank you.
Yeah, David, to answer your
So
question.
how did it feel to you?
It's I've been like David. I have been so entrenched in it for so long, that to be able to kind of share it in this capacity and to know that there's just a group of people watching it right now, it's really fascinating to see the things that pop out now that I've had a day to step away. And some people are asking in the chat about the Irondale Center, which is this exquisite facility that I wish I could have seen in person, but I will get there one day. And it's a former church space that has been turned into a performance space. They have a number of live performances there, they usually do. And even just watching it through the camera, it has such a profound calmness to it. And I remember when the dancers walked in to film that morning, we had been in a dance studio prior, and they said that it completely transformed the way that they approached the movement and the way that they dance with each other in the space. And it's a way, I love the idea of it being a former place that holds a spiritualness to it, and that translates into the what we're doing with dance and music. It still has the sense of spirituality. It's non-denominational, but it is finding something greater than yourself through art. And so to kind of take myself step back from the details and to see them moving in this beautiful space, really moves me, and to see it all come together like that.
Oh, that's really beautiful, Claudia. I mean, I agree. Actually, seeing it in that space, with fragments of, biblical plaques on the wall and things, little writings that you would expect in a liturgical space or something. I have to say that the somewhat deconstructed nature of the religious aspect of it, but yet still having the spiritual aspect kind of clearly, palpably present. It reminds me of, to go very back to the beginning of what I said, it reminds me so much about the peace in that God is everywhere, and that you don't need to be in a church, you don't need to be, you look around and you find the spiritual aspect of life everywhere you look. And something about that somewhat deconstructed liturgical space actually, I think, enhances that idea that the spirit is everywhere, and we find it in the most unlikely places. I want to thank both of you so much for both being here, for creating these works. Claudia, you the choreography, Alice, you the music. I'm really thrilled that we were able to bring both of your creative energies together in this project. And I thank you very, very, very much. I'm going to turn it back over to Pat.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Claudia. One of the takeaways that we David and I have experienced through the projects this season is on the surface, some of the pairings of collaborators seem kind of unlikely. But we're finding not at all, that there's a real harmony to the approach to the craft, whether it's the music, whether it's dance, and the fact that there is an incredible synchronicity between how Alice, you think of, music and nature and something inherent, in the body, and how Claudia kind of took that and expressed the very nature of the shape notes and the shapes of the bodies was something that I don't think any of us could have ever imagined. So thank you both so much. It's really just an absolute honor for David and for me and for our chorus to be able to sing your music, Alice and Claudia, to be able to take our voices and express them in an incredibly moving way. So we're really thrilled and honored, and thank you both so much.